Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round of Bases Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. It's the biggest fight card of the year, especially domestically, and it looks like we are about to make it. As I'm recording this video, I was going to do it last night just after the casual stream, but you know, it was a bit late in the evening, had a few other bits and pieces to do, so we're doing it now. But the weigh-ins, the official weigh-ins have just taken place, and very interestingly, Chris Eubank Jr. missed weight. He came in at 160.2 pounds to start off with. Then he came in at 160.05. So like 0.5 of a pound over the limit on the second attempt. And clearly they only gave him 2 attempts rather than 3. And he's now got to pay a £500,000 fine, as well as not being able to weigh more than 170 at the start of tomorrow. Very interesting. That notwithstanding, that he's also had the £100,000 fine for the egg slap, which hasn't obviously been ratified yet. He does have an appeal pending that, but also the 50,000 to the undercard fighters from the previous bout. This is already looking like a bit of a costly exercise for Chris Eubank Jr. And from what I hear, if either person goes over that 170 hydration limit tomorrow, the penalties for that is even more severe than the ones for today. Yeah, while that hasn't actually changed my prediction as to what I thought was going to happen in this fight, it does spice things up a little bit. So we're going to get to that in a moment. Very briefly though, to talk on that, Chris Eubank has always said, you know, I've never cheated, I've never cut corners, I've always been professional. Unfortunately on this one, Chris, you missed weight. That's an unprofessional move. I was worried about the weight anyway, but we know, I think the way that Chris Eubank Jr. decides to make weight is probably not a very smart and professional thing. I don't think he has a nutritionist in his camp, and it looks like finally him almost trying to crash the weight last minute, which is basically what he admitted to at the Grand Arrivals, I think it was the other day. It looks like it's now starting to take its toll. At the age of 35, boy, I don't know. But look, let's get into the predictions. We're going to go main event first, then we're going to go through level of interest on the undercard. And I'm going to try and keep it as brief as I can while I go through it. So, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Benn. Benn comes in at about 156.4 pounds, I believe. And Chris came in at 160.05 on the second attempt. Weight is definitely a concern here, and I guess him having to make the weight is the biggest issue. We all know, and I mean, look, his dad said numerous times, once he's not a 160 fighter, he's a 168 fighter. So he clearly knew that at that certain age, trying to get yourself back down to that 160, even though you keep yourself in shape, very little body fat, don't balloon up in weight, it's clear that your body just can't really manage that. On the other side, look, we've heard sparring stories about Conor, so we can only really take Conor at his word and at the word of Nigel at this point in time of how they're really going to sort of attack this fight. Yeah, we look at the previous performances against Peter Dobson and Rodolfo Orozco. I've already given my explanations and how I feel like those are false metrics to really look at. But if we also look at the fact that Conor hasn't been in the ring, I believe 18, 19 months since the Dobson fight, he has had a lot of time to kind of mature into these extra pounds, maybe mature into using 10-ounce gloves as opposed to 8-ounce gloves and all of the in between. So I feel like in terms of the fight itself, all of the benefits at this point in time are all on Conor. He's 28, so basically in his prime years right now. He's not having to actually drain energy to make a not unnatural but a very difficult weight. 147 is not the easiest of weights for him to make, so he's basically been able to eat a lot more than he wants to. He's been able to do a lot of strength training, probably a lot of high resistance training as well, to try and get used to the extra muscle, the extra weight. He's been able to fuel his body and stay maintained and well fueled throughout training camp. He's had good sparring partners in there: Bruno Saras, William Skull, Denzel Bentley. At this point in time, we don't really know what Chris has been doing. He's done a lot of media, but in terms of the work in the gyms, all we've seen is some pad work with Jonathan Banks and him, using his punch machines. Now, I'm sure there's been a lot more behind the scenes he doesn't want us to know about, but that's what we know. Also, you've got Conor's side. There's a united front. Eddie Hearn is united with him. Nigel Benn, Tony Sims. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet alongside Conor at this point. Whereas it seems to be very fractured on Chris Eubank's side. It almost feels like he's taking on it's almost like him against the world. This is also the moment in his career where he said, I'm not used to being the good guy. Like, I never want to be the villain, but people have painted me that way. Well, this is the first time he's actively being supported and being cheered to win. I remember a time when his dad said that, he needed to hear the crowd boo him to give him that little bit of extra edge. But when the crowd actually cheered for him in the Carl Thompson, it felt different. It felt weird. Will that be the same thing for Chris? Will the fact that now gets the adulation that he's probably felt like he's wanted from time and has had a chip on his shoulders to not getting it, will that maybe take a little bit of the oomph away from him, for a bit of that sharpness, a bit of that aggression, because now he's got the love of the people? Not sure. How I think the fight plays out ultimately, because that's what you guys are here for. So this fight basically is won and lost in the first 5 rounds. And the way I work that in my head is that Chris has to be able to take center ring from early, establish that hard jab, establish that range, and say, there is no way you get through this front door unscathed at any point, and has to hit Conor hard enough to make him not afraid to come in, but very, very tentative. Because if you mix that with the fact that Conor has been out of the ring for about, like I said, 18, 19 months, his timing is not going to be where it needs to be under the bright lights. Now, he's got a style that isn't necessarily predicated on timing and reflexes, so to speak, but luckily, because he's not a straight up rhythm fighter, he won't rely too much on the timing, but he will have some moments of adjustment to have to make in those first couple of rounds. And that's where Chris needs to establish his dominance, establish his game plan. He needs to smack that jab. Anytime Conor even thinks to get close, he needs to wrap him up, clinch both the arms, push him back to the ropes, show that, you're the little guy in here. Like, basically just use his dominance, walk him back and try to tire him out, make him try to expend his energy just to get close. And every time he does it, pop the jab. If he can slip an uppercut, maybe a backhand in between, do so. Again, tie up, grab, push back, get underneath him, hold him, make the referee break you, and just get Conor frustrated to the point where you can then make him jump out of character, do something erratically, and then counter. On the other hand, if you're Conor, you've got to basically stay in your own controlled mindset. You've got to stay in that controlled rage that you like to employ. You've got to slip in. You've got to come in at a very low crouch from early, arms up, not in this proper defense guard here. You've actually got to have the arms more around the sides. Leave the middle open, because he's not gonna catch you through the middle. Chris Eubank doesn't throw very good straight punches. His best punches are his arcing punches. You got to make sure that your arms and all of your shots are be able to cover from here, and then down here. Slip underneath, come in, double step the feet in, look for the the little shot to the ribs first, then come with the overhand, and then basically sort of work your work your angles, work your techniques over that. That's basically the easiest way. Or to come in on that side stance, and when Chris is trying to adjust his feet and he's trying to throw his shot, you've got to throw that big up jab out of his line of sight, straight down the middle, and then come over the top with an overhand right, or come over the top with a right and then a left hook combo, a left hook probably to the body. Every time Chris tries to get on the inside, every time that Chris tries to hold, don't aim for the head, hit the body. Work Chris's body now, because it's clear that it's cost him a lot to make the weight. You want to drain as much of his energy as possible from early. Chris is going to be expecting you to be swinging wildly up top, and he's going to be trying to dodge those. You need to employ pretty much the entire game plan, especially in the first 2 to 3 rounds. Even if you potentially lose them on the cards, invest in the body from early. That would be my way that Conor wins this. But in terms of how I actually see the fight going, looking at it, look, all of the physical advantages are on Chris Eubank's side, but all of the, I believe the psychological advantages, all of the conditions for the fight all lie with Conor Benn. Conor doesn't have the same level of pressure on his shoulders as Chris. As much as he would absolutely detest losing his O to Chris Eubank Jr., he's got so many built-in excuses. Like, he can come again, and he's young enough to come again. Like, for Chris Eubank Jr., this is do or die. Like, you've done everything. Like, you've called out the so-called drug cheat. You've got the father that's with a strained relationship right now. Your team is in disarray. You've got allegations of being a charlatan. You've been told that you don't ever really take the fights that matter. You're only there for a payday. You're a con artist. You're not serious. All of this, and at the end of your career, Conor Benn has said you're fighting a welterweight. You've ducked these world title fights to fight someone 2 divisions lower than you. And this is everything on his mind. So he can't afford to lose this fight, and anything other than a dominant and destructive victory is the end of his career. But in my opinion, and I think I'm going to be very different to what a lot of other people have thought is going to take place in this fight. I actually think the fight plays out where in the first round, Chris manages to control a lot of it behind the jab, sort of tries to tuck up, tries to hold. Conor thinks, okay, I'm going to just take you through a couple of rounds, walk you through, conserve some energy, and then take you out late when the extra weight starts to get on top. But I think Conor's gonna manage to invest to that body. I think he's gonna employ a very similar tactic to what Liam Smith did, where he's gonna almost be that front foot aggression, not swing too much, be very patient, wait for Chris's angles to be stifled alongside the side of the ring, then unleash a big right hand. Maybe it doesn't connect fully, maybe it only grazes, but then Chris ends up in the corner and ends up in a barrage. And I think in that moment, that flurry, that salvo will take something away from Chris Eubank Jr. to the point where he's now kind of swimming up tide for 1 or 2 rounds. And ultimately, I think he's going to get caught in the 4th or the 5th round and put down quite heavily. He's going to get up, but I think Conor Benn's going to land, and I think he's going to land clean. I think he's going to hurt Chris, and I think Chris may even go down again and get up. And I think there will be a third time where another salvo comes in, some clean punches get through, and it ends up getting waved off. And I think just because of how this weight cut has happened, this new weight cut, it looks a bit of a bad one. Plus all of the sanctions and other stuff that's imposed on Chris Eubank, I just think he gets stopped on his feet. I reckon he gets stopped on his feet by either the referee or the corner. And I think Conor does win the fight. So my official prediction is Conor Benn to win this fight via stoppage in the 5th round. We could say 5 to 7 just to sort of, give a spread, but I'm truly thinking that the 5th round is where this fight ends. Could be hella wrong. I could have the worst take here, but based on everything I've seen, logic is telling me one thing, but there's too many different variables in the circumstances for me just to look at the logic alone. So yeah, that's my opinion. Leave yours down below. Now let's get to the undercard quickly. Okay, so the undercard, we're going to do it all in one. There's not going to get this individual segment like the main event did. But look, my first fight of interest is Chris Benn-Smith versus Brandon Glanton. I've said from the start, this was my fight of the night. This is the one that I was really interested in. And it almost seems now that a lot of other people have started coming to my way of thinking. So, yeah, just remember who dropped it first. That being said, look, Chris Benn-Smith, we know the gentleman. We know what he's all about. He is going to come in with a high guard. He's very sort of cute on the inside in the way that he works up close. He has to be able to get to that inside to mid-range to really do damage. Problem is, in this particular moment, the person that he needs to be inside to mid-range with is a person that does the exact same things as him, who is a lot fresher in terms of their physical output, in terms of the amount of damage they've taken in fights, and who I believe actually hits much harder, especially pound for pound, and someone that's actually, even though they're a shorter individual, are naturally a heavier, bigger person, like, a former, basically someone that played American football. That those guys are extremely stocky. Brandon Glanton is a guy that, at one point I think was about 260 pounds. Like, he's a big guy that's, been able to sort of come down and make that cruiserweight. And I guess I can mention it now, so that the fight's approaching. When I did an interview with Brandon, he even said to me, he was begging for this opportunity, but if the opportunity didn't come at the cruiserweight for one of the champions or the former champions, he was going to tell Napa that he was moving to heavyweight. He didn't even discuss it. He just said, I was about to go to heavyweight. No one even knew. Like, my team didn't know. No one knew I was making that choice. But now that I've got this opportunity, like, I'm going to stick around here and I'm going to do my work. Now, personally, I think that basically Brandon Glanton is, while Chris Benn-Smith is a more maturated, a more matured, and a more experienced version, I think the rawness of Brandon Glanton, plus the fact that he also is a person that can get a bit lackadaisical and not really do huge amounts of work early to then ramp it up a little bit later on in the fights, I think that may be something where Chris Benn-Smith gets maybe a false sense of security, feeling like he's controlling the majority of the early rounds, but then ends up getting worn out and ground down towards the back end of the fight. So my prediction for this one is that Brandon Glanton wins. I do think he actually wins by stoppage. I think it comes around about the 10th or the 11th round. It's going to go very, very late. Chris Benn-Smith is not going to go down without a fight. He's extremely tough, durable. He does a lot of things very well, better than probably a lot of people even realize, but he does get hit way too often. Brandon Glanton, even though you think he gets hit a lot, he actually gets hit a lot less. His defense and the way that he blocks punches is actually a bit better than the way Chris does, but his punches always look like they have a lot more mean intentions on them. So I'm going to go with the guy who I think wants and needs this more. That's my opinion. So I think Brandon Glanton wins technical knockout towards sort of rounds 10 to 11. Next, Chev Clark, Vidal Riley. I actually changed my mind on this one. So in my predictions league, I've had that I felt Vidal Riley would win this fight and probably win it like a majority decision, fairly comfortable on the scorecards, just because he's got a style that, Chev isn't just gonna walk forward and walk through on him. He's gonna have to respect the power. But then I remember that Vidal Riley's base style ultimately is that of a pure boxer. Is not really a boxer puncher. He likes to set up, he likes to be behind the jab, he likes to control the pace and then eventually unload those heavy right hands as soon as he finds a good opening. I don't think you will get opportunities against Chev, but the work rate that Vidal has exhibited in previous fights to me doesn't lend itself to Chev Clark, who constantly will be working. There's been no social media, he's been training in America, he's been locked away. He will get caught, and I think he probably will get buzzed in this fight, maybe even early, but I feel like I think his activity, which is the same thing that pulled him back to get that split decision loss in the Mosquera fight, will be the thing that ultimately turns the tide in this one. And those moments when Vidal is going to try to be taking a break, maybe not really wanting to get properly in the doghouse, I think those are the moments that Chev is just going to outwork and steal rounds. And because of that, rather than Vidal winning this on I think, and Chev's obviously got a little bit more experience, so I do think that Chev's going to win the fight now. I've changed my mind. I think he's going to win on a split decision. I think it's going to be close. I think Vidal's going to get a lot of the earlier rounds, but Chev is going to he's gonna take a couple, and then towards the end he's going to just be doing more, just kind of out hustling and out muscling Vidal just a little bit. But it's going to be a very hard fight to separate, and I wish both guys nothing but the best on that one. Now, next fight is Anthony Yarde, Lyndon Arthur, the trilogy. It's not a trilogy anyone asks for. However, I do think it's going to end up being better than the first fight, and I feel like it's going to be a little more competitive than the second. That I do think. I've been sort of racking my brain as to how this one goes. I feel like Lyndon's a bit more dialed into this one than he was for that second. And even in that second one, I think his plan was to make Anthony Yarde work hard early and then sort of take it from him late. And he maybe just underestimated some of the damage that he was taking in some of those rounds. And he's always said, oh, he missed the count for the 10. He got up on the 9, but they waved it off because he wasn't on his feet by the 8. So I think in that sense, he probably feels like that wasn't the best of him. Now, while Anthony Yarde is the stick-on favourite for this one, I actually think this fight is going to be much harder for him than the second fight was. And based on the Ralph Filkins fight and some other performances that we've seen, we still don't really know what kind of level he's at. Whereas at least we have a bit more of a gauge of where you kind of place Lyndon Arthur. But I think Anthony Yarde will try to start early, similar to last time, and I feel like he will maybe try to coast in those middle rounds and then try to apply that pressure late when he gets a second win. Bearing in mind, he very rarely comes into the ring at 175 or below. He only ever really does it when a championship or something like that is on the line. So him even making that 175 could be an issue, because obviously Lyndon is a slightly smaller 175, which is a little bit easier for him to make the weight, whereas Anthony doesn't really look great when he goes down to 175. But I do think that overall, just due to activity and probably the bigger punches, which is ultimately what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to be that pressure fighter. He can't try to be the boxer puncher in this one. He can't try to be the counter puncher. He's got to stick on the front foot, similar to what he did the second time, just with a little bit more educated pressure. And I do think that he will win the fight. Though, I think this fight goes points. And not only does it go points, I think we could be in line for a majority or a split. I could see Anthony Yarde getting it on a decision. I mean, it could be a unanimous. I see it going to points. I see Anthony Yarde winning on points. But in terms of the way he wins on points, it could be, like I said, I feel like it could be maybe a majority, a split, where Lyndon does enough, or he employs enough clean work that the people feel like he's of a good standing and deserves consideration. So We'll see how right or wrong I am on that one. I know most people expecting Yard to knock him out. I mean, if a knockout does happen, I don't believe it happens before the 9th round personally, but we'll see. And then lastly, Liam Smith versus Aaron McKenna. Aaron McKenna 19-0, 10 KOs. Liam Smith is 33-4 with 1 draw or something like that. So do we know where the experience gap is? Liam Smith hasn't been in the ring for like 18 months, 19 months at this point, so it's been a very long time. He's not a rhythm fighter, he's not a timing fighter, which shouldn't be too bad for him. McKenna likes to sort of employ a little bit of space, likes to be able to get those long rangy shots off. He's not the biggest of punchers. He's got just over a 50% KO ratio at the moment, but he hits hard enough. However, I don't think he hits hard enough to really bother and trouble Liam Smith. I also could change my prediction in this one. I thought Liam Smith would win via split decision, whereby Aaron McKenna would win quite a few of the early rounds and then slowly kind of, get ground down in the second half of the fight, and then, be hanging on and then ultimately get consideration on one scorecard and lose on the other two. I now have changed that to, I think Liam Smith, he loses, I think he does lose those first 2-3 rounds, but I think he makes McKenna work in those rounds very smartly, like he does. Gets him into positions, makes him uncomfortable, makes him drain unnecessary energy, starts getting to work from about round 4-5 onwards. I think McKenna will have success in moments, but I feel like they would just be moments and be fleeting. And then ultimately, I do think that Liam Smith will grind him down round 6, 7, 8, and I think by the 9th round Liam Smith will manage to get a stoppage here, just so McKenna just doesn't have enough left to go. The team see the writing on the wall, don't really think he can get through, possibly even is dropped once or twice by this point in time. And yeah, rather than let him try to see the final bell, I feel that they'll throw the towel. Either that or the referee may decide that he's had enough and he stops the bout. So again, I had Liam Smith on a split decision initially. Now I've changed my mind to a TKO victory about round 9. Anyway, leave your comments down below. Let me know who you think is winning each fight and how you think they're winning. And I guess we will see who is right, who is wrong. This could be the worst basis picks ever. This could be the greatest. Let's find out. But thank you guys very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. But for right now, it's basis picks locked.